What if I told you there was a theatrical adaptation of one of the saddest, most beautiful anime of all time? And surprisingly enough, it was co-produced by the internet's future president, by Mr. Game Theory himself, MatPat.
Hello, Internet!
It's not as far-fetched as you may think, and honestly, it's also not the full picture. Because ladies and gentlemen, I present to you the production of the Your Lie in April musical, a show that took the West End by storm in 2024. And by storm, I mean this was a production that had to shut its doors a month early in its 12-week run, mainly because people just weren't buying tickets to see the show. But given the West End's treatment of certain shows, this isn't the worst case scenario that could happen to a show. I mean, they could have gotten the Oscar Wilde treatment. So hey, at least it wasn't that bad. But that's where our segment of the story ends. Where the story starts is actually in Japan, because the first production of this play actually started way back in 2022, right after the pandemic, after a ton of delays. And now, if you know anything about Japan in general, you know that they love to make any big important IP into a musical or a stage production. They do this for absolutely everything, whether it be Haikyuu, Attack on Titan, Chainsaw Man, JoJo's Bizarre Adventures. Those last two, I actually made a few videos talking about those theater productions, so if you want, come here and check them out. And if you want to see me talk more about this small niche of anime musicals, well, why don't you give the video a like and subscribe. But in comparison, on paper, I think it's pretty hard to actually try and write a musical based off of JoJo's, based off of any of these other anime series that you got over here, because they don't really lend themselves to the media that easily. Your Lie in April is the exact opposite. It's a show that has music at its center. It is focused solely on music, and also the connection that the characters have, which implements itself beautifully into a musical. I mean, if you handed this out to me, this actually seems like a feasible concept. This doesn't seem like it's just a money grab like all the others might be leaning into. And a ton of other people thought so as well, because the creative team that translated things like the Death Note musical came in to work on this production as well to translate the script into English. By the way, again, self-plug, I did make a video talking about that Death Note musical if you're interested about that too. And while I was following the entire news of this production as it was being made, as it was coming out, as it was released, I wasn't actually able to actually go over and see and watch the show. I mean, come on, it's kind of hard to justify a flight from the US to London just to get a glimpse of the show. So for the longest time, my perception about this production was from reviewers, people that talked about it. Maybe they shared some insight about how the actual production went, maybe some sets, maybe some character details, things that the actors did were all things that I heard from. And from the looks of it, I feel like the majority of people that went and saw this play thought that it was actually done really well. And even though the show ran in 2024, it wasn't until April of this year that we were able to actually listen to the full-on cast recording. For the first time, all around, fans were able to get a glimpse about how the show actually went down. And now we get to hear what those lucky few were able to over in London. And I gotta say, when we're taking everything in consideration, I feel like this play was pretty satisfactory. For me, two of the standouts have to be Rachel Claire Chan, who played Suwaki, and I'm sorry because I'm gonna be butchering this, Zhang Ji-young, who played Koisei. His performance in particular was something that was pretty interesting too, because things that I kept hearing over and over again while looking at things about this play were that he was actually the actor that was playing the piano alongside singing all of his scenes. So whenever you're listening to the soundtrack and then you hear that piano performance, just know that that would have been him on stage performing that live in front of everyone in the audience. And just by doing that, this guy, in my opinion, crushes it. That's doing pretty well for your role, and that is embodying the character perfectly, in my opinion. Yeah, and because of that and the mix of these two voices, I am really fond of the track Where Is My Superhero? Out of the entire track list that we got, I think it's actually my favorite. And for my non-musical averse friends out there, let me tell you what to expect when it comes to an anime musical. Because the first thing is that they're gonna make changes, justifiable changes. I mean, come on, it's hard to capture the essence of a 22 episode show cut down into 2 hours. I mean, you're not gonna hit every note, you're not gonna get every scene, you're gonna have to trim the fat and cut some characters out, or maybe just their characterizations. And sometimes tones are gonna shift quite drastically as well. The importance of musical numbers is gonna come from really sentimental lines, and sometimes that means that they're gonna crank those lines up to 11 and make entire songs out of them, even though maybe in their original context, they were all the way down in 3 when it came to the energy that they were delivered in. It's a different medium, so that means that you've gotta really amp up everything to the next level. Musical theater is just like that in general, and you get used to it after a while. I mean, some things that caught me off guard when I first jumped into us is just how in your face Koisei's relationship with his mother is right off the bat. I feel like that's something that we don't really get too much in depth with until a little bit further along in the anime. But here's the thing about that. Again, this is a play that has a short runtime. If you don't implement moments like that early on, then you're gonna be cramming it in throughout the entire play, and it's just not gonna hit the same. So it makes sense as to why they put it there as well, even though for someone that knows what the show is like, it might seem a little bit jarring. At least this is gonna keep up the same pace that they need to make it brisk and not make everything just stop for a second to just focus on that one element. And another thing too, when it comes to that big emotional number at the very end with the last song, it didn't hit me as hard as I'd like it to. I mean, when I first watched the anime, hell, actually, when I did consecutive rewatches of the anime, that last episode had me in tears. I could barely see the episode from how much water was coming out of my eyes. The musical over here didn't really give me the same emotional impact, sadly enough. And that isn't because the performances were bad or anything like that. No, it's because I feel like the tone was a little bit more cheery than what I originally imagined the scene to be like. Kaori's line wasn't really delivered in the same frequency that was able to make my eyes turn into waterfalls. But that would be one of my few grievances when it comes to the emotional aspect of how this play plays out. Small tiny nitpicks throughout don't really matter too much, but I would just say that sometimes the ages of the characters don't really reflect the actors playing them. I mean, come on, Watari, what happened to you, man? You look like you aged like a sack of potatoes. No hate on Dean John Wilson over here, but his face, everything, this doesn't scream out high school student to me. I mean, I gotta be honest about that. But overall, like I said, this musical had to close its doors a month before its 12-month window was actually fulfilled, even though it had decent to good reviews. I mean, nowhere online did I really find any article talking down this performance, unless it was like on a forum somewhere where it was a super fan talking about how it wasn't a one-for-one adaptation, which would have been impossible to do. But my guess over here is that even though they had internet superstar Matt Pat over here promoting the show, I feel like the majority of his audience is probably American, and I feel like a lot of people like me weren't able to justify our trip over the pond to go over there. But then again, there's also the fact that I don't know how many people out there love anime and love musicals. I don't know what the overlap is in people that are weebs and love Wicked, but it's sad to see that the ticket sales didn't live up to expectations. And even though this segment of the show's story ended here, that's not the end of this musical in general, because like I said before, it started in Japan and it actually is still continuing right now too. Dates were announced for an August national tour, so maybe if you find yourself in Japan during August, September, you're probably gonna be able to get a glimpse of it. I feel like the musical scene over here in the States is probably a lot harder to break into because there are rarely any anime productions that come over here. I mean, not even the Death Note production came over, and that's probably one of the biggest anime productions to be made in English. And even though this play didn't really perform to everyone's expectations, it doesn't mean that that's the end for English language anime plays either, because the same people that worked on these plays are the same ones that are gonna be working on that new Fist of the North Star production that's coming out soon too. So I guess that really shows us that musical theater is really far from dead. I guess they're gonna shoot their shot at anything they can and see if anything sticks. My hope is that afterwards they try to adapt that JoJo play, because that's something that I'd really like to see in English. But with this, I think that rounds off my thoughts on the short-lived Your Lie in April musical. If you were one of the few lucky people that were actually able to go overseas and see this musical, please let me know your opinions down in the comment section below. I'd love to know what y'all think about it. And as always, I was Randy, and I'll be seeing y'all next time. Peace.